Are you thinking about therapy but just not sure where to begin? You're in the right place because today we're diving into how to navigate that often overwhelming world of mental health care. From recognizing what you truly need to find in someone who can genuinely help you, I want you to join me as we unravel the steps to choose not just any therapist, but the right therapist for you. Welcome back to Mindful Chatting, where we dive deep into the journey of mental health and wellness. And I'm Kristin, and today we're talking about a topic close to my heart: finding the right therapist. Now, I know this can be super overwhelming for people, and if you're considering therapy for the first time or even looking to change therapists, this episode is for you. Embarking on therapy is really a courageous step towards understanding yourself and also healing. And I've been on both sides of this, both as a therapist and as someone who has sought therapy. And today I'm going to share what I've learned from these experiences and what you might consider when looking for that right therapeutic match. Today we're going to go over steps and things to think about when you're jumping in to this overwhelming, so many ads and therapists to choose from, what to really look for and what to dive into deeper when you maybe have a consultation with a therapist or an initial appointment, so that you're making sure that you're making the right decisions for your mental health so that you have the best outcomes when you do therapy. If you're new to Mindful Chatting, I have a blog post called Mindful Digest, and the link will be in the description, where it has a full, more in-depth guide as we go through all of these steps. If you need something in writing or something that you want to print out and use as you go through these therapists and talk and reach out to people to get an idea of what you're looking for, I want to first start off with self-reflection. So before you even pick up the phone, Google on the internet, go to Psychology Today, I want you to think about what you need and what your goals are before you ever look at a therapist. And the reason why I want you to do a self-reflection is because it's really crucial to know what you want to get out of therapy. And we need to start here with like symptoms. So are you dealing with anxiety? Do you have depression? Or maybe perhaps you have relationship issues. I think understanding your needs will help you and also your therapist, once you get into that realm, kind of create a roadmap for what therapy is going to look like for you. I remember when I first sat in the therapist chair, not as a counselor, but as a client, I was asked, the first question they're going to ask you is like, what brings you in here today? And I think this moment of self-reflection is what makes this very pivotal in that moment. And I also think that question of what brings you in here today scares a lot of clients off, because sometimes we don't know, and it's because we haven't had this moment of self-reflection. So the reason why I'm really harping on this is that you need to figure out what you're looking for. It's okay not to know exactly what you're looking for, but you need to be honest with your therapist if you're like, I've just been feeling this way and I don't know what I need. Because that just helps the therapist know where you are in your stage of progress and your stage of healing. And so sometimes this question of like what brings you in can be symptoms, or it can be an event or things that have happened recently that you're struggling to manage and work through. And this might be a really good starting point for you of why you're seeking help. I remember the first really big therapist that I used through like an EAP when I was like 16. I had a car accident and I was experiencing all of these things of like, why was I scared before I would get in the car? I would have nightmares before I would even be picked up to be driven because I didn't want to drive. And that could be a good starting point of like, even though I have no idea what these symptoms feel like for me, I don't know what this means, I know I had a significant event and I can start there. And then that therapist can start asking you questions about, okay, well, what have you noticed about yourself since that event? And that can be a really good starting point for you for self reflection, but also to kind of figure out that roadmap that I was talking about. Plus, you also want to think about like when you're done with therapy, like how do you want to feel? What is it that you're really actually looking for? Like, how will you know you no longer need therapy? And I know this is a really big, loaded question, but if you can figure out, like, I don't want to feel anxious or I want to feel manageable in my anxiety, that's a really good goal or thing that you and your therapist can strive for and know that you're getting closer and closer to that. You also want to think about in your self reflection, like, what is my ideal relationship with my therapist going to look like? And I know this sounds really weird, but when you're starting therapy, you are creating a relationship with somebody. Because not only are you going to talk about all of your thoughts and the things that are bothering you, you're going to share things that you don't normally share with your friends or your family or people or your spouse. And so having a really good relationship with that therapist really is paramount of whether or not you're going to do well in therapy. Not because you're not doing well, but that relationship really harnesses 70% of whether or not you are going to do well in therapy. So this relationship is huge. And I want you to consider like your values. What are you looking for when you sit in that chair or that couch? This is a really good exercise. So if you're not driving and you're just sitting here, I want you to imagine, close your eyes, and you're sitting in a therapy office. And I want you to imagine what you would want to feel. Now, I know the maybe initial feeling is like, oh, this feels awkward, this is uncomfortable, I'm anxious. I really want you to think about what ideally you would want to feel. You know, how does that therapist make you feel safe, relaxed? How does the therapist provide you empathy and support? And are you looking for someone that's just very reflective with you, or are you looking for someone that's maybe a lot more direct and, you know, empathetically confrontational with you? And so this is really important because you're going to look for a personality in a therapist that would be able to provide these things for you so that you can feel that when you're in the office with them. I also want people to reflect on, what do I want my therapist to know about me? Now, your therapist is going to ask you information about your background, your family life, all that stuff. And I think if you don't have a good self-reflection before you come into the office with this, you're going to miss things. And it's not because you're hiding anything. I think people legitimately forget some of the big life events unless the therapist specifically asks about certain things, which this person's never met you before. So how would they know? And so I think reflecting on, does there something in my cultural background that my therapist needs to know? Do I think knowing my therapist knowing about my sexual orientation is super important? Is there specific trauma that has happened to me that I feel like my therapist should just know or have in the background? Do I have any mental health history? Is there anything in my family in my mental health history that I maybe need to reflect on that's important for this initial session? And lastly, I really want you to reflect on how much time and resources are you willing to commit? Because your therapist is probably going to want to see you weekly. But I want you to really think about, can I do that? One, like in my schedule, can I actually do that? Or can I even really afford that based on insurance fees, stuff like that? And we'll get a little bit deeper in this, but I really want you to reflect on, like, what am I willing to commit? Because the therapist is willing to commit to you, but I really want you to reflect on, what am I willing to commit to for my own mental health, but also my own healing and my own journey. This tool I want to give you is a free guide if you go to our website, where I offer self-reflection questions if you're considering therapy or looking into a therapist. So you can download this for free and print this out or write this up, and this can help you really dive into the questions that you're looking for, the things that you want to consider before you ever step into a therapy office. The next part of this guide is really understanding therapy approaches. Now, you don't need to know all of the modalities, but you do need to know what approach is going to be best for you. Because when you start to Google and you start to look up therapists, they always have a bio attached to them, and they're going to go into these words, or, mental health loves acronyms. So you're going to see CBT, you're going to see DBT, you're going to see mindfulness, you're going to see ACT, you're going to see all of these acronyms and all of these types of therapy modalities, and you're going to go, what the heck is that? And is that even what I need? It's nice to have a therapist that's maybe trained across multiple modalities so that you're not walking in and going, oh, well, I'm only a CBT therapist and your type of treatment maybe needs ACT. So thanks for coming in, but I'm going to have to refer you to someone else. It's not that that's a total waste of time, but you want to find somebody that either has a lot of modalities or is just really specializing in one, and knowing what that modality specializes in when it comes to a diagnosis. Because if you're dealing with anxiety and depression, you want to find a modality that works with anxiety and depression. So I'm just going to go over some just like basic ones that tend to be most thoroughly like done in bios. You have cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, and that is really widely used of an approach. It's very evidence-based and highly effective. It's mostly about changing the way you think and behave, and the way you reframe stress and emotions and problems. CBT can significantly reduce symptoms of depression in a short period of time. But CBT can be used across different diagnoses. So it's not just depression, but it is very highly effective for depression and anxiety. And there are different types of CBT strategies for like insomnia and trauma. So it's very important to see, like, is this therapist, really specializing in CBT of insomnia, and is that something I personally need help with? DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, is another one you might see in bios. This is helpful with emotional regulation and borderline personality disorder. Do you need to have borderline personality disorder to do DBT? No, DBT actually is very helpful with just really across the mood disorders. DBT is very structured, it's very skill building, and it's very detailed in the way that each session focuses on different things. So if that's kind of what you're looking for, if you're looking for a therapy that has a structure, has a designated topic and thing for each session, the DBT would be kind of your big push for that one. But DBT is really effective for managing emotions and also improving relationships, because one of the big parts of their curriculum is building and healthier relationships, and it really heavily focuses on that. Lastly is those mindfulness-based therapies, and that is really a big, wide range of therapies, but the essence of most of those therapies is promoting mindfulness, but it's mostly that conscious awareness of our present moment and not judging and shaming. And this mindfulness-based therapies are really effective for stress and anxiety. And so understanding these modalities can help you find which therapist and whose expertise and approach might match after you've done a lot of self-reflection of your therapy goals. And this will increase that likelihood of that successful therapeutic relationship that we were talking about. Again, you don't have to know all of the ins and outs. You just need to know the basics so that you're picking the right person for what you're looking for. The next thing to consider when you're looking at therapists and their bios is specialization. The specialization of a therapist really matters, especially when it aligns with your specific challenges. And credentials ensure that they're qualified, but their focus areas can be truly shaped, your therapy experience. I've always valued a therapist who not only held like credentials, but also had that deep empathy and that understanding of that specific background. So when you're looking at specializations, such as trauma, grief, LGBTQ plus, addiction, you want your therapist to have, you know, area of expertise within the area that you're looking for. And that's why that self-reflection is so important, because if you don't know what you're coming to therapy for, you don't know if this particular therapist in front of you has specialized in this, has experience with this, which will offer that understanding and that guidance, because usually specialization reflects in, I've had experience in this. I often have, my caseload is mostly of clients with this. I'm going to have a greater understanding. I'm going to know what you're working with or what you're dealing with probably a lot quicker than maybe a therapist who doesn't work with this as much. This is just going to allow more greater treatment outcome for you. And also this creates a better alliance, because if this therapist has specialized in this particular thing or knows what you're working with, you're going to quickly go to working with the modality of the therapy and not working so much on clarifying and understanding and like nitpicking just to get the therapist to understand what you're working for. You also want to make sure that they're licensed. The licensing requirements really have therapists have that necessary education that they need. They've been supervised, and they've also have these ethical standards that they need to abide by. And so that really gives a certain level of this competence and this professionalism that you should be looking for in therapy. You want to check reviews and word of mouth. And checking reviews and getting recommendations are more important than you might think. They do provide insight into a therapist's effectiveness. I've chosen therapists for myself based on recommendations, and I've seen my practice grow based on word of mouth. Someone may come in and go, hey, you're seeing a colleague of mine and they've told me about their therapy and I want to see if it'll work for me. But remember, what works for one person might not work for everybody. So you want to look for patterns in these reviews and these recommendations. So in this, digital age, you can check online reviews and testimonials online very quickly. And so I always look for, effectiveness, style, was the client satisfied? But I'm looking for patterns, because not every therapist is going to work for every person. But if you're seeing a consistent issue across multiple clients, that's a pattern. And so you want to pay attention to that and notice, is that something that's going to impact my ability to align with this therapist? One of the other things that I've started to really look for, especially when I'm looking for clinics that I want to refer people to, like psychiatrists or things that are outside of my scope, I look for reviews on front office staff. And I know that sounds so weird, and you're like, well, why would I care so much? But these are your people that you're going to have your initial, experience with, and you're going to have consistent experiences with them if this provider is under a clinic. They're going to be handling your scheduling. They're going to be handling any follow-ups that you need. They might handle a lot of your billing and your payments. So if you're seeing a consistent pattern of reviews where the providers may be wonderful in this clinic, but you're seeing all of these reviews of that the front staff is not following up with stuff, canceling appointments, not calling back, that's a pattern. And you need to notice that, because even though that provider might be wonderful, if there's a barrier to getting treatment because of that front office staff, you want to look for that in these reviews. Plus, I think word of mouth is the most powerful thing when it comes for recommendation. Like I said, a lot of my referrals and base come either from insurances or word of mouth. I don't really do a lot of marketing, and my practice thrives on just word of mouth and insurance. But word of mouth, allows, looking for people who have been with that therapist for quite some time. And you might want to ask questions about why they choose to stay with that therapist. You may get answers like, oh, well, I've just been with them for so long. Well, that shows that they're probably not gaining a lot. They're probably just out of convenience. You want to look for people that are like, oh, well, every time I go see this therapist, like I just gain so much insight about myself. They've helped me with so much of my relationships. I'm talking to so and so again. I feel so much clearer. Those types of feedback and reviews are important because even if that person's been with that therapist for a long time, they're getting something out of their sessions with them. And you want to ask about that, not just like, oh, well, this is my therapist, go see them. You want to ask a little bit more about like, what are they getting out of sessions with them? The next thing to consider, and I think this is probably the most considered, but I just wanted to address it, is logistics, like practical considerations. And that includes like location, fees, scheduling. That can significantly affect your therapy experience. When you think about location, if your therapist is close to your work or your home, you're more likely to attend sessions. You're less likely to cancel, reschedule, postpone. And trust me, you won't get anything out of therapy if you're not attending, or you keep canceling, or you're intermittently showing up. Now, the ability to do telehealth sessions is so much easier now. I think that's probably only positive thing that's come out of COVID, is that teletherapy is easier. And I really think it should be considered if you're struggling to find time, if that's your major excuse of like why you can't go to therapy is I don't have time. Because you can schedule a session. It can be in the privacy of your own home, or it can be in your car if you have that hour before work. And you can just log in and talk to your therapist before you get on with your day. Some therapists even provide a hybrid approach where you can do some sessions in the office or some virtually based at your own convenience or whatever's going on in your life. This is going to allow you to stick with attending, and it just might be something to consider when you're looking for your selection, because on a lot of your bios or a lot of these websites, you're going to see like, what is the therapist's modality? Are they in office mostly? Do they provide telehealth, or do they do both? Another thing to consider is like availability. Like, does your therapist actually work with your schedule? If you're having to leave work early a lot or cancel and having to not attending your personal appointments to make your therapy appointments, you're not going to sustain this. Yeah, you might do it in the beginning, but after a while, like you're not going to be able to do this, and you're going to lose money, and your bosses are going to question. So you have to think about, does my therapist offer the availability that works for me? This is something to really ask in those consultation and those initial sessions of what are your appointment hours? So I can, before I commit to you, can I actually commit to the time that works for my life? And remember that front office staff that I was talking about? You want to look at how easily you're able to get a hold of your therapist if you need to schedule or even reschedule. A lot of therapists now have cancellation fees if you cancel within a certain time. And if you can't get a hold of your therapist or the front office staff to do that, you might be hit with a fee and you're, again, not going to be able to sustain it. Lastly, if you're really going through a hard time and you're looking for a therapist that's going to be accessible to you, that may be able to accommodate urgent or emergency appointments because of what you're going through, you want to say, can I get a hold of my therapist to be able to do that? If you're leaving messages in the hope that your therapist checks your voicemail or your email, this might not be the best option for you if you need urgent or emergency appointments. So this is a great topic for discussion during your consultation and your initial session. You also want to think about insurance and fees. Being able to use medical insurance to get mental health care is so much easier now, and it's way less restricting. But you need to understand if you'll be paying out of pocket for a bit before meeting your deductible, and then possibly a copay or a percentage kicks in. So you want to think, can I afford my therapy before I even get the benefits of using my medical insurance? Because normally before you hit your deductible, you're paying the full fee of your therapy session. If you're choosing a self-pay option, the therapist should be legally providing you a good faith estimate or a GFE, and you should get that before you even attend the appointment or at the appointment, because this provides you an outline of all of their fees right up front, so you're not supposed to be surprised if you get a bill later. And you also want to think, a lot of therapists collect money at the session. So can I afford to attend that session because I'm going to be billed at the moment? Some places will bill you later, but a lot of places will bill you at time of service. So you need to say, can I afford the session before I attend? Lastly, you want to think about your therapy format. Not all therapists provide individual sessions, so you want to make sure that when you're attending, if you're looking for individual therapy, you're making sure that that's actually what you're signing up for. You don't want to be signing up for group if that's not what you're looking for. If you're looking for group, but you are signing up for individual, you also don't want that either. Plus, also, your therapist might be able to provide you family support or family sessions or couple sessions if that's the area of focus that you're looking for. And so this is some of the questions that you might ask in those initial consultations in that initial appointment of, if I need more support than just individual or group or whatever you're looking for, can you give that to me before you commit to someone who may not be able to provide that for you? Another thing that I don't think we talk enough about is your intuition, and how your intuition plays a crucial role in choosing the right therapist. If you feel comfortable and understood, that's where you're going to get most of your therapy out. But on the flip side, if you're feeling uneasy or unheard, you might want to consider that maybe this person isn't right for you. So again, that comfort level during those sessions is key of whether or not you'll actually continue to see the therapist, show up for your appointments, or even get anything out of therapy. It's not just about credentials and specializations, though they are important, but nothing can beat the feeling of good bedside manner of a therapist in the session. So things to look out for, positive gut reactions, can look like feeling comfortable, feeling at ease when you're with them, your conversations flow really well between you two, you're feeling heard, you're understood, you're having a sense of optimism or hope when you leave. Those are good positive gut reactions if this is a good alliance. Negative ones to look out for can look like discomfort, anxiety, feeling tense, misunderstood, judged, doubts or hesitations. Those are things that you want to ping to yourself and go, I don't know if this person is really what I'm looking for and what's right for me. I don't think a lot of people know that you can ask for a consultation, and do not hesitate to ask for one, because this is really a test drive for a potential therapeutic relationship. I always encourage questions during these sessions, both when I'm the therapist and when I'm the client, and do not be afraid to ask for them. These are normally free to you, and you can get an idea of who you're going to see before you ever walk in the door. And you can use this guide and going to that blog post and printing it out and getting an idea of questions, and formulate a lot of these questions, and you can ask them all up front before you even schedule with them. So this is something that I don't think a lot of clients or a lot of people really know that they can do with a therapist before you ever commit. During these consultations, though, this is where it's a good time to discuss the expectations for this process and how involved do they keep clients into the decision making. So a lot of the times you'll be talking with your therapist about some goals and things you want to work on. If you want to be involved in what modality you're using, if you want to be offered a bunch of different options and you with the therapist make that decision, Or if you just want the therapist to guide you, this is the time in this consultation to really ask what that looks like so that you're both on that same page. Plus, you can get an idea of like how much you're going to be expected to participate in a session. This can look like, clients just doing a check-in while the therapist is really at the center, teaching and providing guidance of things. But some clients want to do most of the talking while the therapist will like intermittently provide insight and reflection to things. So you got to figure out, what are your expectations? How does this therapist work within the session? These are all really good questions that you can do in the consultation before you ever show up. The last thing I want you to consider as a guide is being patient and persistent. Finding the right therapist might take you some time, but let me tell you how much it's worth the effort for your long-term wellness. And I want you to reflect on like how far you've come in your journey instead of focusing so much on where you're heading. I think therapy is a process and it requires time before you can see significant improvements. It's also important to recognize that if you don't practice the tools and the things and the insight that you're doing within the therapy session outside of the therapy session, you won't see progress, or you will see very little progress. It is highly encouraged to practice between sessions where you're going to see like the best outcome of things. I also cannot stress how consistency and just showing up is one of the most beneficial ways of actually seeing improvement in therapy. Showing up even if you feel like you don't have anything to talk about or you're feeling good is actually the most beneficial time. You will see more insight and progress into your life during these sessions because you won't be so overwhelmed by the drama and the chaos and the stress of what's going on. You can actually sit and reflect and see where you're going. And these sessions tend to be the most beneficial with clients when you show up and you don't really have anything to talk about. So this is something that I wanted you to consider when you're finding a right therapist of, take your time. This is not a race, and be persistent. If you don't get callbacks right away or you're not finding what you're looking for, follow this guide to kind of help you figure out what it is and use a lot of self-reflection of what you're actually looking for. Now, I always want people to walk away with my podcast episodes with tools or things to use in this process. I love Brain FM. And I think this will help you support your journey in therapy because I use Brain FM in my therapy sessions with my clients. This music is designed to enhance your focus, relaxation, or even help you with sleep. They have different sections on their app. So you find out what state you want to be in and you click it, and it has timed sessions. You can skip them if you don't like what's going on. It's just very user-friendly, but the music is science-based on enhancing those brain waves to create that mental state that you're looking for. And I think this has been incredibly beneficial alongside therapy. Check out Brain FM, and I'll put a link in the show notes, and see how you can tailor your audio to help you find more mental clarity and that emotional calm that you're looking for. If I could recommend a book to help you explore your body and what therapy has done for people, specifically of trauma, I love The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. This book really explores the impact of trauma on the body and the mind and offers this like revolutionary insight into how we can overcome it. It is really heavy, but I think it's very beneficial if you're considering thinking about therapy and whether or not that mind-body connection is real or not. I think this book really dives deep into it and from a science impact. And I think it's beautifully well written. So I will put a link in the show notes for this particular book. But if you're looking for like workbooks or things that you would like to do in between, if you're not really sure, but you want to start working on your mental health, I have like a cognitive behavioral therapy workbook, like specifically for depression. I'll put that link in there. There's also an anxiety and phobia workbook that's really good, so I'll put a link in that. There's a lot of different workbooks. I think if you're considering journaling, there's a couple, guided journals that are pretty good, that I'll also put links for. Think about tools that you can do. And even if you do find a therapist, having a workbook or a journaling practice is only going to help you in therapy in the long run. I really want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you found this episode helpful. Please share it with someone who might be on their own path to finding a therapist. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights and stories. I want you to visit our website linked in the show notes for more resources and to continue this conversation. Take care and see you in the next episode. Please note that this podcast includes affiliate links, which means I may receive a commission if you make a purchase through these links at no extra cost to you. I only recommend products I truly believe in and use myself and will actually think benefit you. Your support helps keep this podcast running. Thanks.